A condemned outlaw's final confession, a daughter's secret identity revealed, and a truth so explosive it will change an entire town forever. Sometimes the most dangerous family secrets are the ones hidden in plain sight, and sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell. This helps us bring you more powerful stories like this one. Clayton "Red Devil" Morrison sat in his death row cell at Huntsville State Penitentiary, staring at a letter from someone he'd never met but had been watching from afar for 23 years. The return address read, Deputy Sheriff Rebecca Martinez, his daughter, who had no idea her entire life was built on a lie. In 18 hours, Texas would execute him for murdering 3 police officers during a bank robbery. But the letter in his weathered hands was from the child he'd given up to save her from a life like his. The little girl who'd grown up believing her father was a war hero who died when she was 3, not a career criminal facing the electric chair. Rebecca had agreed to meet him out of professional duty, not knowing she was about to discover that everything she believed about her identity was fiction. At 11 p.m., well past visiting hours, a guard appeared.
Morrison, you got a visitor.
Clayton was escorted to the attorney meeting room, where he found someone who definitely wasn't his lawyer. The man in the expensive suit had cold eyes Clayton recognized from his years with the Crimson Brotherhood motorcycle gang.
Clayton Morrison, the man said without preamble. My name is Vincent Torrino.
I represent certain interests who know about Safety Deposit Box 447 at Millfield National Bank. Clayton felt ice in his veins. The box contained evidence that would prove his innocence and expose massive law enforcement corruption, evidence he'd planned to give Rebecca.
What do you want? Simple. You're going to die tomorrow.
But your daughter doesn't have to follow you to the grave. Torrino pulled out a photograph of Rebecca in her sheriff's uniform.
Lovely girl.
Be a shame if something happened to her. Torrino slid the photo across the table.
Take your secrets to the grave. Die quietly, without any dramatic confessions. Let sleeping dogs lie. And if he refuse,
then Deputy Martinez will discover that being related to Clayton Morrison is a very dangerous thing to be. Clayton stared at the photograph of his daughter, strong, confident, everything he'd hoped she would become. Now his past was reaching out to destroy her future. The choice was impossible: save his daughter's life by staying silent, or give her the truth and watch her die for it. Back in his cell, Clayton stared at the ceiling as execution hour approached. Every instinct screamed at him to protect Rebecca, but staying silent meant an innocent man would die while corrupt cops walked free. At 6 a.m., he made his decision. I need to make a phone call. 30 minutes later, Clayton dialed a number he'd memorized but never called. Millfield County Sheriff's Department, Deputy Martinez speaking. Hearing his daughter's voice for the first time in 20 years hit him like a physical blow. She sounded strong, professional, nothing like the scared little girl he'd left behind. Deputy Martinez, this is Clayton Morrison. You're scheduled to visit me today.
Yes, Mr. Morrison.
I'll be there at 2 p.m. There's been a change.
I need you to come now.
And I need you to come alone.
Clayton's voice cracked. Rebecca, I'm your father.
And if you don't come alone, right now, we're both going to die.
The silence stretched forever.
What did you just say?
Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper.
I said I'm your father.
When you were born, he was Thomas Mitchell. Your mother was Sarah Martinez. He gave you up to save your life when you were 3. That is impossible.
My father died in Afghanistan. Your father gave you up to save your life. The Afghanistan story was fiction to give you a hero instead of a criminal.
Clayton's voice broke.
Rebecca, I have 18 hours to live, and there are people who want to kill you to keep me quiet. He could hear her rapid breathing through the phone.
Why should he believe you?
Because you have a crescent moon birthmark on your left shoulder. Because your favorite stuffed animal was a purple elephant named Murphy. Because the last thing I said before I left was, Daddy loves you more than all the stars in the sky. Rebecca's sharp intake of breath told him she remembered. I'll be there in 2 hours, she said, her voice steady despite the emotional chaos.
And Mr. Morrison?
If you're lying to me, I will make your last hours very unpleasant. I wouldn't expect anything less from my daughter. After she hung up, Clayton knew he had 2 hours to see Rebecca face to face and somehow keep her alive. But first, he had to survive Torino's people, who wouldn't be happy about his deviation from their plan. The guard who came to escort him wasn't one Clayton recognized. The man's hand rested on his baton, ready for violence. "Change of plans, Morrison," the fake guard said quietly. "You're not going back to your cell." Clayton allowed himself to be led down an unfamiliar corridor, calculating angles and opportunities. The fake guard was younger, stronger, but Clayton had 12 years of death row experience and desperation born of paternal love. "In here," the guard said, stopping at a maintenance room. "Nice and private." As soon as they were inside, Clayton moved. He spun around and drove his chained hands upward, catching the guard under the chin. The man staggered, and Clayton followed with a knee to the solar plexus. The guard dropped his baton and gasped for air. Clayton grabbed the weapon and pressed it against the man's throat.
"Who sent you?"
"Go to hell," the guard gasped. Clayton increased pressure. "My daughter will be here in 90 minutes. If anything happens to her, I'll make your death very slow." The fake guard's eyes widened as he saw murder in Clayton's face. "Torino," he whispered.
"Vincent Torino hired me."
"Said to make sure you had an accident before your visitor arrived." "How many others?" "2 more. 1 in visitor processing, 1 in the parking lot. They're supposed to grab the girl if she shows up."
Clayton felt rage building.
They weren't just planning to kill him, they were planning to kidnap Rebecca. "Here's what's going to happen," Clayton told the injured guard. "You're going to use your radio to call off the other 2. Tell them the plan has changed." "I can't."
"Torino will kill me." "Torino will kill you anyway. You're a loose end." Clayton leaned closer.
"But if you help save my daughter, Deputy Sheriff Martinez has friends in law enforcement who might protect someone who saved her life." The guard looked at Clayton's face and saw not just a condemned criminal, but a father who would do anything to protect his child. After a long moment, he reached for his radio.
"Base, this is Unit 7.
Change of plans. Operation is scrubbed. All units return to base immediately. Acknowledged, Unit 7. Clayton listened as the other operatives confirmed they were leaving. Within minutes, the immediate threat to Rebecca was neutralized. "Now you're going to help me get to visitor processing," Clayton told the guard. "And you're going to make sure my daughter and I have a private conversation." "Why would I do that?" Clayton smiled for the first time in years. "Because the story I'm about to tell her will bring down every corrupt official between here and Mexico. The one about how an innocent man spent 12 years on death row while the Real killers walked free." For the first time since his conviction, Clayton Morrison felt hope. In 1 hour, he would see Rebecca again. And instead of taking his secrets to the grave, he was going to give her the tools to expose the truth. Deputy Sheriff Rebecca Martinez walked through Huntsville's gates at 1:47 p.m., her mind reeling. The man on death row claimed to be her father, a father she'd been told died heroically in Afghanistan. But he'd known private details only someone present during her earliest years could know. "Deputy Martinez?" The desk sergeant looked up. "You're here for the Morrison visit? There's been a change. Conference room B instead of the normal visiting room. More private." Rebecca's hand moved to her weapon.
"Why the change?"
"Warden's orders." Morrison requested privacy for sensitive family matters. Standard protocol required surrendering her weapon, but Rebecca hesitated. If Clayton really was in danger, going in unarmed seemed unwise. But refusing would end the visit. She handed over her gun and radio, then followed a guard to a small conference room. Minutes later, Clayton Morrison entered in shackles. The man claiming to be her father was tall and lean with weathered features. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold, green eyes exactly like her own, with the same upturn at the corners she saw in the mirror every morning. "Rebecca," he said softly, 20 years of longing in his voice. She stared, searching for resemblance. He had her nose, her chin, the same way of tilting his head when concentrating. "Tell me," she said simply.
"Where do you want me to start?"
"Start with why you abandoned me."
Clayton's face crumpled.
"Because staying would have gotten you killed. I was deep with the Crimson Brotherhood, and my enemies were targeting families. Your mother deserved better than life on the run, and you deserved a chance to be normal. So you just left.
He gave you to your mother's sister, Elena Martinez.
She'd been trying to have children for years. She agreed to raise you as her own.
Rebecca felt the world shifting.
Elena Martinez, the woman she'd called mother for 20 years, was actually her aunt. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Clayton continued. I'm asking you to listen, because in 4 hours I'll be executed for murders I didn't commit, and you're the only person who can make sure the truth doesn't die with me.
What truth?
The truth about why 3 police officers really died during that bank robbery.
The truth about corrupt cops taking money from the Crimson Brotherhood.
The truth about evidence sitting in a safety deposit box in your town, waiting for someone with a badge and integrity to act on it. Rebecca's training kicked in.
What kind of evidence?
Everything needed to bring down the largest law enforcement corruption ring in East Texas. Everything needed to prove I was framed for murders committed by dirty cops. Why didn't you use this during your trial? Because they threatened to kill you if I did. And now they're threatening you anyway. You're not that scared little girl anymore. You're a trained officer with skills to protect yourself. And you have the power to stop them. Where is this evidence?
Safety Deposit Box 447, Millfield National Bank, registered under Thomas Mitchell.
The key is hidden where only you would know to look. Where? Clayton's eyes filled with tears.
Under the purple elephant. Rebecca's breath caught. Murphy.
Her childhood stuffed elephant, mysteriously appearing in her bed the night before they'd moved away from Texas.
You put something in Murphy.
Clayton nodded. A small slit in the back seam. The key to safety deposit box 447 has been with you for 20 years.
Rebecca's mind raced.
Murphy was still in her apartment, packed away in childhood memories she'd never thrown away. What's in that box? Evidence that the 3 officers who died weren't heroes gunned down by criminals. They were corrupt cops killed by their own partners to keep them quiet. Clayton's voice grew urgent. The bank robbery was a setup. Those officers had been skimming drug money for years, and when they got greedy, their partners decided they'd become liabilities. You're saying cops killed cops? Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Sergeant David Torres, and Officer Jennifer Kim were executed by Detective Ray Sullivan and Captain Frank Morrison during what was supposed to look like a botched robbery. The Crimson Brotherhood was paid $50,000 to provide a convenient fall guy. Me. I was supposed to die in that bank with the officers.
Clean and simple. Outlaw robs bank, kills cops, outlaw dies in shootout.
But I survived, and I saw Sullivan and Morrison plant evidence while they thought I was unconscious. Why didn't you tell your lawyer? Because they'd gotten to my public defender. Every time I tried to tell the truth, more evidence would appear. They made it clear that revealing what I knew would result in your death. The guard cleared his throat.
Time is almost up.
Clayton turned to Rebecca desperately. The box contains 15 years of corruption documentation. Drug money laundered through police pensions. Evidence stolen and sold back to criminals. Witness protection information sold to the highest bidder. How did you get all this? Because for 2 years before the robbery, I was working undercover for the FBI.
Agent Sarah Morrison was my handler.
I was gathering evidence on Brotherhood activities, trying to get out of the life and build a future where I could be a real father.
Rebecca's word tilted. You were FBI.
I was trying to get immunity and witness protection. But before we could complete the operation, the corrupt cops decided I was too dangerous to let live. What happened to Agent Morrison? Car accident 3 days after the robbery. Brake failure. Very convenient timing. So everyone who could testify to your innocence is dead. Not everyone. Agent Morrison was careful. She made copies and hid them where corrupt cops couldn't find them. Some are in the safety deposit box. The guard stepped forward. Time's up. Execution in 3 hours. Rebecca stood unsteadily.
I need more time.
There is no more time, Clayton said. Go to your apartment, get the key from Murphy, go to the bank. But be careful, Torino's people will be watching. Don't trust anyone until you know who's clean.
How will uno know? Start with Sheriff Bill Harrison.
He was a rookie when the robbery happened and asked too many questions. They transferred him to get him away from the investigation. He's clean. As Clayton was led away, Rebecca touched his shackled hands. If this is all true, I'll find a way to prove it. If this is true, Clayton replied, you're about to discover that some of the biggest criminals in Texas have been wearing badges for 20 years. Rebecca drove to Millfield County at dangerous speeds. 3 hours until execution. 2 hours until the bank closed. One chance to get the evidence. In her apartment, she found Murphy in a dusty box labeled childhood stuff. Feeling along the elephant's back seam, she found a section cut and re-sewn with different thread. Inside was a small brass key and folded paper reading, "For my daughter, when she's ready to know the truth."
TM.
At Millfield National Bank, 15 minutes before closing, Rebecca accessed safety deposit box 447. Inside were dozens of files, photographs, audio cassettes, and a thick envelope marked, "Read this first." The letter inside was from Agent Sarah Morrison, FBI. If you're reading this, Clayton Morrison is probably facing execution for crimes he didn't commit. He was my confidential informant for 2 years, trying to build a legitimate life for his daughter. The bank robbery was a setup to eliminate 3 officers threatening to expose corruption and frame Clayton as a scapegoat. Rebecca opened the first file. Photographs of cash changing hands between police and gang members.
Audio recordings planning evidence theft.
Bank records showing payments to police accounts from drug trafficking shell companies. Her phone buzzed, "Stop what you're doing and walk away, or join your father on death row." Someone was watching. Rebecca quickly photographed documents with her phone, sealed the box, and asked the clerk to add Sheriff Bill Harrison to the access list. Driving back to Huntsville, her phone rang. "Deputy Martinez?"
This is Warden Thompson.
Morrison has requested to record a final statement. He says it contains information vital to a federal investigation and specifically requested you as witness. 90 minutes until execution.
He'll be there.
Morrison asked me to tell you something. He said Murphy kept the key safe, and now it's time to unlock the truth. Rebecca's blood turned to ice. If Clayton was sending coded messages through the warden, it meant he didn't trust normal communication channels. Arriving at Huntsville, she noticed 3 black SUVs with government plates, engines running. "Federal agents," the guard explained. "Showed up an hour ago."
Something about national security. Rebecca texted Sheriff Harrison, "Need immediate backup at Huntsville. Clayton Morrison innocent."
"Have proof. Federal agents may be compromised." Response: "En route with state troopers. Do not trust federal agents until I arrive. Bill." Inside, she was forced to surrender her phone before being brought to Clayton, who sat in orange jumpsuit with 30 minutes until execution. "Rebecca, did you find it?"
He found everything.
"But there are federal agents here. Lots of them."
Clayton's face darkened.
"Then we're out of time. They're here to make sure I don't talk." Before he could say more, the door burst open. 3 federal agents entered, led by a familiar man in an expensive suit. "Deputy Martinez," the lead agent said coldly.
"I'm Special Agent Vincent Torrino, FBI."
Rebecca's heart stopped.
Torrino.
The man Clayton had warned her about, now claiming to be FBI. "I understand you've been conducting an unauthorized investigation into classified federal matters," Torrino continued with a cold smile. Rebecca kept her voice steady. "I'm investigating evidence of police corruption. Evidence that's been classified as national security. Evidence you accessed illegally.
Torrino stepped closer.
Evidence that could compromise ongoing federal operations."
Clayton laughed bitterly. "Still playing both sides, Vincent?"
"How long have you been wearing that FBI badge? Or is it as fake as everything else?" "Ask him about Operation Glasshouse," Clayton told Rebecca urgently. "Ask him why a cartel operative was using federal agents as cover for assassination attempts." Torrino's face went white. "That information is classified." "It's classified because it would expose you," Clayton shot back. "Rebecca, this man isn't FBI. He's cartel intelligence using fake federal credentials to eliminate threats." Rebecca studied Torrino's credentials closely and spotted problems. The hologram was slightly off, the badge number format incorrect.
Mr. Torrino, what is your badge number?
That's classified information, Deputy. No, it's not. Federal agents are required to provide badge numbers to local law enforcement upon request. Torrino's hand moved toward his weapon, but Rebecca was faster. She drew her backup .380 from her boot, which security had missed. Step back. All of you. Deputy Martinez, one of the other agents said, you're interfering with a federal investigation. Prove you're federal agents. Real credentials, badge numbers, supervisor contact information. Right now. The three men exchanged glances, confirming Clayton's warning. They were cartel operatives posing as federal agents. 10 minutes to execution, came the announcement. We don't have time for this, Torrino snarled, pulling his weapon. But the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered as alarms blared. Helicopter rotors and vehicles surrounded the building.
This is the FBI.
The prison is surrounded. All federal imposters surrender immediately.
Sheriff Harrison's voice crackled over Rebecca's side radio. Rebecca, Real Federal Backup is here.
Assistant Director Patricia Wells is in charge. The men with you are wanted for impersonating federal agents. In the darkness, Clayton lunged at Torrino despite his shackles, knocking the fake agent off balance. The gun went off harmlessly as both men crashed down. Rebecca quickly disarmed the other imposters.
Real FBI agents burst through the door, weapons drawn.
Deputy Martinez. The lead agent was a woman in her 50s with absolute authority.
Assistant Director Patricia Wells.
Are you injured? No, ma'am. But my father needs medical attention. Wells looked at Clayton, bleeding but conscious. Mr. Morrison, based on evidence Deputy Martinez provided, the governor has issued a stay of execution pending full investigation. Clayton's eyes filled with tears.
Rebecca found the evidence.
Deputy Martinez found evidence proving your innocence and exposing a corruption network spanning 4 states. Wells smiled.
You're not dying today.
You're going to help us make sure the people who framed you spend their lives in prison. Rebecca took her father's shackled hands. It's over, Dad. The truth is finally out. Clayton looked at his daughter, the child he'd given up to save, who'd grown up to become the officer who would save him. No, he said quietly.
It's not over.
It's just beginning. 1 year later, Austin Courthouse was packed as the largest law enforcement corruption trial in Texas history concluded. Former Chief Ray Sullivan and 17 other officials had been convicted on charges from murder to racketeering. Sullivan received life without parole for murdering 3 officers. Vincent Torrino and his cartel associates got life sentences for impersonating federal agents. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit watched the final sentences from the gallery. Her father had testified for 3 days, detailing 20 years of corruption with the precision of someone who documented crimes while pretending to be a criminal. How does it feel to see justice served? Assistant Director Wells asked. Rebecca looked toward her father, officially exonerated and awarded substantial settlement for wrongful imprisonment.
It feels like the beginning.
We've identified corruption networks in 6 other states.
Clayton walked out of the courthouse a free man for the first time in 20 years.
More importantly, he'd been reunited with a daughter he'd sacrificed everything to protect.
So what now?
Rebecca asked on the courthouse steps. Now we do what Agent Sarah Morrison always intended, Clayton replied, showing her a badge, Special Consultant, FBI Public Corruption Unit. We use the skills I learned as an outlaw and the authority you earned as law enforcement to make sure this never happens again. Rebecca laughed with joy and disbelief. A father-daughter team of federal agents. Agent Morrison would have called it perfect justice, Clayton said. The outlaw's daughter who became a cop, and the cop's informant who became an outlaw, working together to clean up law enforcement. 3 months later, Rebecca stood in her FBI office looking at a map covered in red pins, locations where their exposed corruption network had connections. Each pin represented dozens of arrests and hundreds of victims finally getting justice. Clayton knocked on her doorframe. Ready for the next case? Rebecca looked at the file he carried, reports of police corruption in Nevada involving a motorcycle gang and missing federal agents. Always, she said. What do we have? 3 DEA agents missing, a sheriff's department asking the wrong questions, and a motorcycle gang operating with impunity for 5 years. Clayton smiled.
Sound familiar. Sounds like job security.
Rebecca grabbed her jacket. Let's go save some lives. Walking toward the parking garage, Rebecca reflected on the extraordinary chain of events. A condemned man's last words had exposed his daughter's identity. A daughter's determination had exposed a father's innocence. Together, they'd exposed corruption that had poisoned law enforcement for decades. Sometimes the most dangerous outlaws wore badges. But sometimes the best law enforcement officers were the ones who understood exactly how outlaws thought. The Morrison family was back together, fighting crime from both sides of the law, proving that justice could come from the most unexpected places. This incredible story proves that family bonds are stronger than any lie, and that justice will always find a way to survive. Clayton Morrison's last words didn't just expose his daughter's identity, they exposed a truth so powerful it changed everything. If this story moved you, remember, sometimes the people we least expect turn out to be heroes, and sometimes the most dangerous criminals hide behind badges. The truth may be buried for years, but it never dies. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this with someone who believes in the power of family and justice. Help us spread stories that prove love and truth will always triumph over corruption and lies.